boys and girls, welcome back to Backpocket Game Reviews, and today we're going to talk about the PS1 Classic that's coming out. So the other day PlayStation announced that they're making a PlayStation Classic, you know, in light of like the NES Classic or SNES Classic, both of which are fantastic little products. Obviously you can still get a Raspberry Pi that does more, and that's probably also still going to be the case with the PS1 Classic. However, it is a huge chunk of nostalgia because you are getting essentially the original controller that they were made to be played on. It is a very nice and easy to use emulator system, at least with the NES and SNES Classics. I assume that Sony is going to do something very similar to that. But honestly, this doesn't really come as a shock to me for Sony to announce this. This wouldn't be the first time that, well, Sony has copied Nintendo. And I know some of you out there are going to be like, the hell do you mean Sony copied Nintendo? There's been numerous times. If you don't believe me, I'm going to give you two of them right now. The Move came out after the Wii. I don't know if you remember the Move. You should, because it's still used with PSVR. But it essentially is, well, the Wii for a PlayStation. All-Stars Battle Royale, that was another PlayStation exclusive. It's essentially Super Smash Brothers with PlayStation characters. So, Sony announced that they're making this PS1 Classic, which I am relatively excited for. So don't let that fool you. It is $100. That is the price tag that they have stamped this bad boy with. $100. I wouldn't really call that overwhelming. I also really wouldn't call it cheap. Obviously I can build a retro Pi at that price. I can build a retro Pi at the same price as the NES and the SNES. People buy this for collectible value. To them, this is a piece of nostalgia, and that's why I like it. I have the SNES and the NES Classic because I enjoy being able to have that original feeling of how I played those games, and it's fun to be able to have that experience with my kids, like, hey, Daddy used to play on this controller. I know it looks really weird now, but this is the thing of the time. And it is fun to see my kids react to a lot of these older games that I used to play and how they take them and the kind of hot garbage that they look at it as. Not all of them. There are just some games that really didn't age well. Balloon Fight being an excellent example. So, with that being said, they've announced a couple of the games that are going to be on this system. They've announced 5 games. I remember 4 of them off the top of my head because, you know, my memory is hot garbage. So, you got Wild Arms, you got Tekken 3, you got Ridge Racer, and you got Final Fantasy VII. Well, I think all of those games are decently well-known titles. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII definitely takes the spotlight amongst the games that have been announced. And that's not a bad thing. Final Fantasy VII is easily one of the most iconic PlayStation games of all time. But that's the issue. How many of these, because they word it as genre-defining games that are going to be on there. 20. You get 20 games. 20. Genre-defining games. We know 5 of them. So that's a quarter. Now, to be fair, I'm already expecting for my favorite PS1 games to not be on there. I just kind of assume it's going to go that way. Also, you're getting the original PS1 controller, so there's not going to be an analog stick, which is to some degree going to probably limit the selection they're going to put on there. Now, the one game that I'm still honestly really hoping for is on there, and if it's on there, I will rush out and pre-order one of these. By the way, pre-orders are already up for this. You can pre-order at GameStop, Best Buy. Those are the 2 I checked last night. So, Amazon has pre-orders up for it as well. And if Metal Gear Solid's on there, I will rush out and pre-order one of these things. Easy. Cakewalk. But here's the trick. There's a few reasons why I don't think Metal Gear Solid will be on there. One of which is the Psycho Mantis controller port trick. I don't know if they'll be able to emulate that. And if they do, it's probably going to be a little more difficult because they're going to have to emulate it and put it in so it knows that it's doing that for just pretty much one game. Maybe it actually won't be that hard to emulate. Maybe I'm just reading too far into this. But I really hope Metal Gear Solid, the original one, is on there, because if you were to ask me what is the most iconic PlayStation games of all time, that would be one of 5 games I would name for you. That is the game I remember the most playing on it, alongside Final Fantasy VII. I would also like to see Parasite Eve on there, but I'm not going to be too pushy on that one, because I understand where that might not make it on there, but maybe it will. So I think with them only announcing 5 of the games, it does make it a little more difficult to really say, hey, this is a great value at $100, because that is one thing Nintendo did do differently, is here's the games that are on it. They were very upfront with that. And I mean, you even got an unreleased game. You got Star Fox 2. So maybe they'll toss an unreleased game on this. I don't know, I'm not Sony. But I do think it is a smart move for Sony, and I don't think you're going to run into the demand that the NES and SNES Classic had. I don't think you're going to run into the supply shortages, because that's a big Nintendo thing. Nintendo stuff is typically hard to get because Nintendo doesn't manufacture stuff. Sony does. Sony has a lot of experience with manufacturing products. Nintendo, they outsource it. They don't have their own stuff. And I mean, even Sony outsources a lot of their manufacturing, but they are set up as a more manufacturing-based company. So I don't foresee you having the same problem as what there was with the SNES and NES Classic supplies. And keep in mind, you do get the 2 controllers, so you are getting 2 up front. I really, really hope they're well made. I wish they would have done the analog stick ones, but I get it. Most of the classic PlayStation games didn't really require it. This just makes me really, really antsy and really, really want Nintendo to release a N64 Classic. Think about it. They could sell a lot of extra controllers. That thing could hold 4 controller slots. Come on, Nintendo, just give me the damn N64 Classic. And at that time period, I was a bigger N64 fan than I was a PlayStation fan. That was still back when Nintendo was really competitive to be the #1 home console. Now Nintendo just wants to be everybody's second console, because that makes it so they can be in everyone's household. It's not a bad thing. That is probably one of the smartest game plans you could have. But I really hope that the game list isn't watered down. Sony does tend to have a relatively big head about themselves, hence with like the crossplay, when the CEO said, oh, our views on crossplay is Fortnite, PlayStation's the best place to play Fortnite. You shouldn't play it anywhere else. We know that we created the best place to play Fortnite. That's essentially what he said. So they could toss some hot garbage on here, 15 other trash games, and go, these are some of the best PlayStation games. We know, because we made them. I don't think they will. I don't think like it's going to be a whole bunch of terrible games, but I mean, there's a lot of licensing that would go on. I don't foresee the Crash Bandicoot games being on there. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they're going to toss on. Spyro would be nice, but I strongly doubt Spyro is going to be on there too. Mostly because, you know, Activision owns the rights to those games, and they probably aren't going to want to pay a lot of rights, whereas Square Enix tends to already be on the SNES and NES Classic, so I'm sure they're willing to work with the rights. Which is another thing that also makes me say that, yeah, they kind of copied Nintendo with this, because Final Fantasy VII was one of their highlights, just like Final Fantasy VI, or 3 in the US, was one of the highlights on the NES, or SNES Classic. So it will be interesting to see what the rest of those games are. If it's just going to be a fluff piece, or if it's going to be actual quality games. Also, on a side note, Sega delayed the Sega Genesis Classic. They are working with a well-known software manufacturer, their wording, with a established history, and They didn't announce who. They also didn't state if that means they're still working with AtGames on that Sega Genesis Mini. But it's delayed till 2019. Which I'm fine with if it means that I'm not going to get an AtGames console. AtGames makes some trash products, so I would really like the original feel of like my Sega Genesis. So Sega, please do right by the fans on this. Same for you, Sony. Please do right by the fans on this. Guys, I'd love to hear your feedback on this. Are you really excited for the PS1 Classic? Is this something you're going to rush out and pre-order? Or is it just, I'll wait and see what other games come out? And also, what games would you like to see on it? Kind of curious on that. Because I mean, I have my selection. You're obviously probably going to have slightly different selection. So I would like to see what you guys would really hope to see on that particular device. Guys, if you did enjoy this video, also don't forget to drop a thumbs up. If you want to follow me anywhere else, links are in the description box as always. And if you really like my content, you can click subscribe and ding that little bell, because right now YouTube isn't telling anyone about my content pretty much unless you have that bell dinged. We're in that fun period for me. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll have plenty more content coming for you, and stick around.